Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Beyond Train podcast. I am your host, Lee Abdal, and I'm so happy that you're here listening to this episode today. If you are new around here, consider subscribing or following the show. If you like what we do here, make sure to comment, subscribe, leave a rating or a review. Sharing is always the best way to help support us. If you would like to support us further, you should consider joining the Beyond Terrain Academy. First and foremost, it is free to join. You do gain access to terrain fundamentals classroom, as well as an introductory course on the true root causes of disease. However, if you do want to go deeper, you can join as a full member to gain access to some exclusive content. Monthly master classes, the Terrain Wellness Club with Jacob Diaz and Alex Zeck, myself, of course. Q&A and discussions, the Terrain Studies Library, deep dive classrooms, things on parasites, lifestyle, movement, etc. You gain access to so much more. A truly unified community, walking along the same path, and some really, really cool discussions. If you pay for the year, you do gain access to a complimentary Catalyst consultation to launch yourself into your terrain-based healing journey, as well as a year-end check-in. Regardless, you should go and join the community because it is free to join and there are tons of free resources. But without further ado, let's get into today's episode.
Hello and welcome, Kayleigh Mason, to the podcast. So happy to be here.
Hello. Thank you so much.
Amazing, amazing. So the first question that I ask all my guests to get a little baseline to work off of, I love to get a little definition of health. What does health mean to you? How does it manifest? What does it look like? You can take it in any direction that you'd like. Pretty broad and tough question, so I'm looking forward to your answer.
Yeah, so open-ended. You're like, wait a minute. But that is a good question. What is health? Well, health is when you wake up happy, you wake up feeling good, you don't wake up feeling depressed and exhausted every day. You wake up feeling happy and excited, like when you were a little kid. And you were like, yeah, and you woke up because you were excited to play with your friends or your
Mm,
toys. You were excited about life. So that to me is health is when you have enthusiasm. The spleen in Chinese medicine is considered the enthusiasm organ. And a lot
okay.
of modern people today have very weak spleens because they often skip meals or they eat late at night or they eat fried foods or iced foods. So they have very weak digestive systems. And so they're very low in enthusiasm and low in excitement for life. So I feel like the true sign of health is how excited somebody is to live, how
Mm,
excited they are to be alive.
I love that. That's amazing.
Mhm.
Yeah, we've touched on that, as a definition of health before. We've done this about 80 sometimes now, 85 times. So it's amazing to hear all the different definitions, and something that we
Yeah.
come back to is kind of that joie de vivre, that
Yeah.
curiosity, right? For taking on
Yes.
a new
Yes.
day and that gratitude for the day.
Yes. That's a big marker for health, I think.
I love that.
Yeah.
There's something that to be said, about waking up in the morning and the first thing you kind of reach for is like a coping mechanism, like your phone. I know that
Yeah.
that's a surefire way for me to ruin my day is to reach for the phone right away. So I've started putting that off until, late morning, even afternoon. I push it off as much as I possibly can because I know that the second that I kind of reach for that, I'm not necessarily like looking at life as full as I possibly can.
hmm Well, I think I'm the opposite because so I'm a life path 3 in Chaldean numerology, which is the communicator healer. And
Yeah, okay.
I'm so excited every day to talk to people on Instagram. Like that is what brings me probably the majority of my happiness in life is just answering people's questions. I don't know why I'm just programmed this way, but I find talking thrilling. And so for
Amazing.
me, opening up like when I wake when I wake up, you go to the bathroom, you empty your bowels, and then I get on Instagram and I see what questions people have for me, and that makes me really excited. So I think for me it's different because I'm not really going on to look at reels or going on to see posts or anything. I'm just going to check my messages and
Yeah,
see who has messaged me because this is the most exciting thing in my life is talking. But that's just
I
who I
love
am,
that.
I love talking.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's amazing. I'm so happy that you brought that up because it kind of showcases the beauty of our realm and how individual each and every one of us are
Yeah,
and how there's not a one size
yeah.
fits all. protocol for health, right? It's
Yes.
very individual. Um,
Yes.
I'd love to hear a little bit more. You've brought up traditional Chinese medicine. You brought up something else that I didn't get the name of. Maybe
Chaldean
you could.
Chaldean
Yeah.
numerology.
I'd love to hear a little bit about sort of these philosophy that you've learned about and that you kind of applied to your life and your work.
Well, Chinese medicine, you probably know that it's, over 3,000 years old, an ancient
Hmm.
system of medicine. And it maps out the biomeridian channels in the body. We have all of these channels connected to buttons in our body. So I wrote an article called Go Go Gadget to describe or to, detail all of these buttons all over the body because I see us as organic robots in a video game. And so the biomeridian channels are part of that electrical system of the robot. And then all along the robot, just like Go Go Gadget, just like, Inspector Gadget, we've got all these features on our robots that a lot of people are not using. You have buttons that can take headaches away. You have buttons that can heal your digestion. And, they may not be visible, but if you actually get in tune, you can feel them. There's these kind of little, almost little indents in a way all over the body. Like, especially on the top of the head, you can feel this indent about maybe 8 fingers back onto from the forehead onto the top of the head. And that one actually increases hair growth. And then there's buttons on the fingernails that if you rub them together, your hair grows. So there's all these secret buttons all over the organic robot. And people can tap into that. My dad used to say, that's what's wrong with people is they're not touching their spots. And my sister and I, we were kids when he would say this, so we would just like, what are you saying? But he's right. We've got all these spots, we've got all these buttons all over our bodies. And when and they call that acupressure, acupuncture, when you tap into the buttons. And when you press them, you can create a lot of relief in the system and improve your health and do all kinds of magical things like grow your hair, as I mentioned, and relieve pain. So yeah, Chinese medicine has mapped those out, and you can see all your go get gadget buttons through Chinese medicine and maps of the map of the foot, like the reflexology foot map, because
Hmm.
there's a map on the foot with buttons that connects to all the organs. So there's all these buttons all over the bottom of the foot, and so they created a healing modality out of that called reflexology. So you can press those to improve your health. And then, yeah, they're all over the body. So you can do all kinds of things with those buttons. And then Chinese medicine also mapped out the elements and how they affect the body, all the organ systems, the biorhythm clock of the body, like all of your organs run on a precise clock. The spleen and the stomach, they're the strongest from 7 to 11 a.m., and they are the weakest from 7 to 11 p.m. So that tells mankind that you should be eating your largest meal in the morning up until 11 a.m., and that you should stop eating after 7 when the spleen goes home to his wife and kids. He's done for the day. Like every organ has their break time during the day. So the kidneys, it's from 10 to 1 a.m. So that's when people should be asleep. People should go to sleep by 10, at least 11, and then they can get the kidney juice, give the kidneys a break, the kidney adrenal system. And yeah, they map out the biorhythms, the biomeridians. There's all this amazing stuff you can discover about the human body through Chinese medicine. And science is just catching up to Chinese medicine. Like you'll see a lot of studies confirming the benefits of acupuncture and Chinese herbs, and they're just catching up to it. It used to be seen as a kind of quackery or pseudoscience, but now science is actually catching up and they're like, oh, this is real. Like, this is real. The biomeridian channels are real. These buttons are real. And we are influenced by our environment and the elements, and, the organs do run on these clocks. And then numerology also fits into my kind of organic robot in a video game theory because I believe the numerology, which we discover through the numbers of our birthday and the letters of our names, this numerology, in my opinion, is the coding of the organic robot. So this is the code of your human psyche that
Hmm.
programs you to be who you are. Like, what's your birthday?
March 21st, 2000.
March 21st?
Yeah.
Wow. So your first vibration is 3, which is my life path. So you're also the communicator healer. And then your achievement number is 6, which is my first vibration. So we have very similar numbers in different places. And 6 is the artist or the musician. And that's my other job. You know, I'm a nutritionist, but then I'm also a musician. So we are artists, we're healers, we're communicators, we're musicians, we're sensitive. You know, 6 is a program that programs the organic robot to be very sensitive. Energy healer adds up to 6 in Chaldean numerology. So we often have a gift to be able to heal people with our touch or with our words or with our thoughts. You know, when you talk about Reiki, a lot of Reiki practitioners are life path 6. And again, energy healer adds up to 6. Healing arts adds up to 6. And you'll find a tremendous amount of people with this number in the healing arts. It's profound, really. And then what was what year were you born?
2000.
2000. You're one of those 2000 babies.
Yes, I am.
So you're in life path 8. And life path 8 is the angel archetype or the guru. So you are exactly where you're supposed to be in life. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. You're the guru, you're the healer, you're the communicator, you're the energy healer, you're a master of the healing arts. And this is all part of your journey, you know, what you're doing online, you know, teaching people and being their health guru. This is all part of your destiny and your journey to the highest realms of that destiny. So that's your programming from God that programs your organic robot to operate in this video game.
Wow. Well, what a high compliment, and beautiful little. I'm speechless. That's very
I know. You know,
interesting.
people are always so moved when they hear about their numbers, and they're always so jacked up because it does resonate, you know, on a deep level. Like some people, they feel like it's describing their secret self, you know, because some people are not really living the lives that they want to live. And so when you tell them, oh, you're this and this and this, it's like that was a secret to them. Like they say, wow, it's really creepy. It's so eerie how accurate it is because I haven't even told anybody that I want to do that.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, like
And
yes.
sorry, no, I was just gonna say, it's not as though I've always been on this path either. There was a time in my
Ah,
life where I was lost, and that I
yes.
didn't know this, and it took a lot of soul searching and healing for me to pursue this endeavor in my life.
Yes.
So that's very, very
And you
interesting.
know, what's interesting is in Chinese medicine, they teach us about yin yang, dark
Yeah.
light. So yin is light, or sorry, yin is dark and yang is light. So, you know, yin would be the moon and yang would be the sun. And you see with the yin yang symbol, they're connected and they have a little
Absolutely.
bit of each other. You know, there's a black dot in the white and there's a white dot in the black. They don't exist without each other. And this permeates the entire universe, including the psyche of man. So every person has a dark and a light, a yin and a yang side to their psyche. So you cannot be off track in the video game. You're always going to be on your track that you're programmed to be on, but you can be
Sure.
on either the dark side of your programming or the light side of your programming. And the dark side of the programming is the exact opposite of the light. So with the 3 program, which is your first vibration and my life path number, on the positive side, you have happiness adds up to 3, but angry adds up to 3. You have truth adds up to 3, but con artist adds up to 3. So on the negative side of this number, we feel angry. On the positive side, we have happiness. We bring happiness. Love adds up to 3. Truth, profit adds up to 3. So when we are on our positive side, all we care about is the truth. And when we're on the negative side, we become like Hillary Clinton, who is a life path 3, a total sociopath. Sociopath adds up to 3. Con artist adds up to 3. So this is the shadow side. Everybody has a shadow and a light. And then with the 6, you find the same thing. You find on the positive side, lucky, winner, perfect, healthy. These words all add up to 6. And on the negative side, it's the exact opposite. You see they're not healthy. They're not doing well. They're with the 8. Narcissist adds up to 8. That's the negative side. And then angel adds up to 8. That's the positive side. So whatever the positive side is, the exact opposite is the negative side. And this is often why people have so much regret after exploring the shadow side, because it is the exact opposite from their positive side. And so they feel a lot of shame when they think back to how they acted in their shadow. Because it's like when you're in your positive side, you're like, that's not me at all. That's the opposite of me, because it's really, truly the opposite of you. But it's all part of your programming, and you can't escape that programming. But I feel that the goal here on earth in this video game is to seek the light and to walk on that positive path of your programming. So, which is where you are now, I feel, from what I can see.
I hope that you guys are enjoying the episode so far, and if you are, you will love the Beyond Terrain Academy. I've taken everything that I've learned from studying the terrain, speaking with the greatest minds in the terrain field, and have distilled it down to the fundamentals, easily digestible content and material, as well as a place to go even deeper and more specific into the terrain as well. Becoming a full Academy member gives you access to monthly masterclasses, the Terrain Wellness Club, the Terrain Studies Library, Q&A and discussions, as well as deep dive classrooms in things like parasites, movement, terrain lifestyle factors, as well as a space for reflection. There is so much available in the Beyond Terrain Academy. And don't forget, you can pay for the entire year to gain access to that Catalyst consultation to launch you into your healing journey, as well as a year-end check-in to ensure that you've been putting into practice the terrain principles to keep you accountable. But let's get back to the episode.
I've studied sort of this shadow work concept from the Jungian perspective. I'm really curious about your thoughts on what that looks like, just from your learnings.
Like what the shadow archetypes that Jung mapped out?
Just kind of the great work of exploring that yin and yang dichotomy to achieve that light. What does that work kind of entail?
Well, Jung believed that everything you hate about others reflects a part of you and something that you hate in yourself. So it reflects your shadow self. So, I made this post a few months ago that said social media is collective shadow work. Because you find a lot of times, if you make a post or share an opinion, people will come onto the post and they're mad at you. They're angry, or they project something negative onto you that doesn't really have anything to do with you. So this is a lot of times you see with social media, and the internet, people are very nasty and very ugly, and they act very mean online. So online, social media is a very interesting place because it's a place where people a lot of the time express their shadow. I don't know exactly why it brings out people's shadow, but it really does. And people will say this, they'll say, oh, everybody's mean on the internet. Everybody's a bitch online. and then they say, if you met me in real life, you wouldn't say this to my face. So there is something very interesting happening, but I feel that it is part of the journey to becoming the positive side of yourself, is exploring the shadow. When my dad was on his deathbed, my best friend went and visited him, and he was kind of napping there, and she said, hey John, how you doing? What are you up to? And he said, oh, just doing shadow work. just looking at, because that's where you really see the shadow the most, is when you're weak at the end of your life, maybe, or you have health issues, because the physical body, so the organic robot, requires minerals to conduct electricity or to conduct the light. So I believe that those electromagnetic minerals are what create enough light that we can operate the light side of our programs in our consciousness. So when people are very, very low in electricity because they're low in minerals, they are naturally switching over to their shadow side. Like, when I was a teenager, I wasn't getting enough nutrition. I wasn't getting enough, love and support in life. And I was always switching over into my shadow. And then when I worked out my health and got my minerals and remineralized, I felt like it was so easy to be on my positive side. It was so easy to be happy. It was so easy to share love. So the minerals, in my opinion, are a big piece of switching back into that positive side. Like I think it is an interesting experience to face your shadow and see your shadow and integrate your shadow and love your shadow. Like really to love the narcissist, because your shadow on your life path, your shadow is the narcissist. And to love the narcissist, because sometimes you need him. Sometimes you have to pull him out, for certain situations or people, there might be an experience where you have to be the narcissist just to protect yourself. So there are ways that we can use the shadow in a positive way, but for us to live out our positive potential, we need minerals, we need light in our cells, in our blood. The blood is 55% plasma, and plasma is this kind of saltwater mineral solution. And so the blood is the electrical fluid of the organic robot, and that's rushing over the whole body, every organ in the brain. And the kidneys are charging the blood with what they call in Chinese medicine yin yang energy or jing or essence. So your kidneys are charging up your blood. And that's why people need to go to bed at night when the kidneys get their juice, from 10 to 1 a.m. People have to go to bed at night so that the kidneys can function and charge your blood so that your blood is charged and it can provide that charged blood for the brain so that you can be your positive potential. So you need minerals, you need hydration, but you need proper sleep to get into that positive persona.
Very interesting. No, I completely agree. The minerals kind of form this structure, this lattice. I studied a little bit
Yes.
of like the bioenergetics for a while, and I found it so interesting looking at like um sort of the energetics that come with different minerals and
Yeah.
the how they provide this resonance for our biological structure.
Yeah.
That energetic patterns, like we're seeing the Fibonacci sequence, like these fundamental natural patterns.
Yeah. 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 I like that. The lattice, the structure, that's really true. They create the structure. And I don't think anything can function without that light, the light that they conduct. Nothing can really function. So to me, that's, foundational that people have to get
Mhm.
minerals and then they need proper hydration. They need good water because water is a solvent. And so if your
Mm.
water doesn't have minerals, it's going to steal the minerals from your body. People will say, I hear this all the time. They'll say, you don't need minerals in your water because you get minerals from your food. But you really
Mm.
truly do need minerals in your water because, again, water is a solvent. So if the minerals aren't there, it will just steal the minerals you got from the food. And what's the point of that? Like, okay, so you're going to eat those minerals, process them just to lose them to this empty water. So people getting good water is important for mineralization as well. You need good water, spring water with minerals. And then you need good organic forms of minerals. In chemistry, there's organic forms and inorganic forms. Organic forms are bound to carbon and carbon-based life forms like plants and animals. So we're meant to get our minerals not from rock, not from the inorganic sources, but from the organic sources in foods.
Mm. Amazing. So is that sort of the argument for why reverse osmosis water isn't necessarily the best water to drink?
Yeah, yeah, that's the main one is that it's demineralized. And as we've been pushing RO, as they have been pushing RO on the public, more and more research is coming out. More studies are coming out to show that people who drink RO water, they have higher incidences of tooth decay because there's no minerals, and the minerals are being stolen from your saliva, stolen from your skeleton. That they have higher incidences of cardiovascular diseases, that they have extremely low levels of vitamin D. A lot of the time they have very low vitamin D. And people will say, oh, well, just remineralize the water, duh. But most people don't know how to remineralize RO water. They don't know the electrolytes, the ratio of electrolytes. They don't have the equipment or the understanding to properly remineralize water. I see a lot of people saying, just add a pinch of salt. Well, you're going to add a pinch of salt, which will add a lot of sodium, but it's not going to add the amounts of calcium and potassium and magnesium that we need for human health that you find in a good spring water. And water is so complex. We really are only kind of scratching the surface of what water is. We're understanding that it has a consciousness, that it gives us consciousness. There's people like Veda Austin that are showing that water can etch pictures into ice and take photographs in a way. And then, there's experiments where people are showing how water is affected by negative emotions. So
Hmm.
water is very complex, and I don't think you can just empty a water, remove every mineral it's collected over hundreds of years that it's been digesting, because water is a digestive in a way. Our hydrochloric acid is an acid water. It is a
Mm.
water. So, water digests. If you soak things in water, they start to digest. So the water travels through the earth for however long, and it picks up all these different minerals, inorganic minerals that it digests, um, organic forms of minerals from soils, and it's got all these different organisms. It's a whole universe in there. And then we think we can strip it down to nothing and add a pinch of salt or add a drop of trace minerals or add whatever people think they can add, and that will be a healthy water to drink. And that just doesn't make sense to me.
Hmm. So tell me, is there a way to properly remineralize water? Like, because I've fallen into this trap of, yeah, you need to remineralize your water. And it's so, I
Yeah.
just, fall into that same trap. So what if you're
Yeah.
stuck drinking RO water? Like,
What do you
is there a
do?
solution? Yeah.
Well, it is quite complicated. And again, I often wonder if you can do instant remineralization, or if it doesn't become one with the water and then you end up losing um, some of your minerals anyway. So, there's just not enough information, and there's not enough research showing what we can do and if it is safe, if it does work. But I did hear from one woman, one who was using coral calcium plus magnesium plus a potassium powder plus sodium and then fulvic minerals. So she had 5 products that she was adding to the water, the RO water. And she said, yeah, I do feel like it's hydrating me now. Because she was one of the people, because I had hundreds of people when we did our big water conversation on my page, because that's kind of one thing I do on my Instagram page, is I host these community conversations. So one thing we found in the health space is that there was a lot of censorship, like zeolite reps and water filter reps would delete negative reviews. They would bleach the internet of negative reviews. So I started posting everybody's negative reviews just as a way to give them a voice and give them a platform. And
Mm.
so as part of our big water conversation, we had a community conversation about different water filters and how people feel on different kinds of waters. And the worst rated water was the reverse osmosis. And even people who remineralized it said this water never hydrated me. I always felt like shit. And the one woman who had come to me and said that her water wasn't hydrating her, so I was talking about how the issue is that they're not adding calcium, they're not adding potassium, like pristine hydro, as an example. They add everything back except for potassium. They'll and not everything. I just mean they add the electrolytes. They'll add calcium, magnesium, they add silica, um, but they don't add
Mm.
potassium. Potassium is missing. So people were developing POTS drinking their water. They were developing
Oh, wow.
potassium deficiency diseases drinking their water, because that water missing potassium is now going to take the potassium from your body. So anyway, this one woman, she said that when she added the coral calcium, the magnesium, the potassium, the sodium from salt, and the fulvic minerals, that she was finally feeling hydrated on that water.
Wow.
But that's a lot of stuff that you got. That's a lot of, I feel like, oh my God, it's just easier to go to findaspring.org and see if there's a fresh spring near you that has good clean spring water, and drink that, or pass it through a carbon filter if you're worried about contaminants. Or if you have a good tap water, because a lot of people in the United States actually have good tap water. 60% of water in the United States is unfluoridated, no fluoride added. So you have to check, because a lot of people have good water. And then sometimes it just has chlorine or chloramines, and you can remove that with carbon. You can use a carbon filter that removes a lot of contaminants without removing essential minerals. So
Hmm.
I think those are the better options, because we've found yesterday, actually, it was only yesterday we found this out, that cooking with RO water removes the minerals from the foods, like in
Oh,
exponentially higher amounts than using non-RO water. Like they found when you use mineral water to cook, the calcium levels of the foods actually increased. But when you used RO water to cook, all of the mineral levels dropped by huge amounts, like
wow.
66% or more. So it seems like, damn, this water is really trying to become whole again. It's had its soul removed, because soul comes from SOL, sole, salt water mineral solution. Sole, the etymology on that is coming from water or coming from
Hmm.
ocean. So soul is the salt water mineral solution of the body, and it's the water's soul, that salt water mineral solution. That's its soul. And we remove the soul, and then we think, okay, I can just add a little soul back. I don't know if we can
Yeah.
do that. It sounds a
Yeah.
little, it sounds a little, what's the word? I just want to caution people that, it can, if your teeth start hurting, or you, like when I was drinking RO water, my molars started crumbling. And I hear that from a lot of people, that their teeth were suddenly developing cavities when they had never had cavities in their life after drinking RO water. So I would just say to people, if you feel good on the water, great. We're happy for you. But if your teeth hurt, or you got cracked heels or headaches or migraines, or your skin's dry, then just go to spring or carbon filtered. Just find an alternative, and you know.
Yeah. Amazing. Great discussion. Not one you hear too often. So I'm really,
Yeah.
really glad. And one thing that I absolutely do love about your page is you giving a voice to individuals, and
Yeah.
especially concerning one inorganic volcanic mineral, which I would just love to dive into.
Yeah.
Of course, I'm asking about zeolite. Now, full disclosure, like I've changed my mind on this, and I've taken it in the past. I
Yeah.
was convinced. I was totally
Yeah.
caught by the marketing. And I even read the studies. I read the papers on animals, and I
Hmm.
still the rhetoric still convinced me. But
Hmm.
obviously, I was overwhelmed by all the positive reviews and not
Yeah.
realizing that there was something else at play there. So I'd just love to hear a little
Yeah.
bit about zeolite.
Well, and that's what's happened to a lot of people, is because these zeolite companies and zeolite reps have bleached the internet of negative reviews. It has become so difficult for so many people to figure out whether this product is good or bad. Because when you only see positive reviews, you're going to think, wow, this is a great product. But actually,
Exactly.
that tipped off a lot of people, which I was impressed by. People actually said to me, I didn't take zeolite because I could only find positive reviews. And that seemed very suspicious to me, because even really safe products like magnesium or fish oil, like cold pressed fish oil, or things that are pretty standard in the industry, even they get negative reviews. So
Hmm.
why does this detox product that comes with a list of supposed Herx symptoms to describe the negative side effects, why does this one not have any negative reviews anywhere? That's what some people ask themselves, and that's what made them not take it. But for a lot of people, it actually just made it look like it was a miracle product. Like, wow, this is amazing. Like, nobody's having
Yeah.
any issues with it. But then I started posting the negative reviews, and that attracted more people that had had horrible experiences with zeolites, that they wanted to share their story. And that's real, that's informed consent, which a lot of those people that sell zeolites, they are part of the anti-vaccine movement, and they are always rallying against the pharmaceutical companies and against the doctors for not giving people informed consent. And then they pull the biggest hypocrisy in the wellness space by not giving people informed consent about their product, by not telling
Mm.
people, by the way, some people have reported seizures, heart attacks, dementia, epilepsy. Like, really crazy stuff has happened to people after taking zeolites.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, right? Because they go on and on about how it magnetizes to positively charged cations. Well, many of your essential minerals are positively charged cations. Potassium is positively charged, calcium, magnesium, manganese, iron, chromium, zinc, copper. And they're giving this stuff to babies. They're giving this stuff to newborn babies and pregnant women who need those essential minerals the most, because they're in this stage of life where they're growing rapidly, or in the case of a pregnant woman, she's creating a human in her belly. She needs all the zinc, copper, iron, chromium, and electrolytes that she can get. And they're
Yeah.
telling pregnant women and telling moms to give this to their babies when babies need iron so bad. Iron is crucial for a child's development, an infant, and they're removing the iron. So, they go on and on about how, oh yeah, it removes positively charged cations and the heavy metals are positively charged. Well, guess what? Many of your essential minerals are in the class of heavy metal. Zinc is a heavy metal, but it's an essential mineral. A child can't even grow without zinc. You have no
Yeah.
immunity without zinc. So, these people are not experts. They're not experts in metals or heavy metals. People hear, it's such a buzz phrase. They hear heavy metals and they instantly think, bad. But heavy metals, heavy just means the weight of the metal. So the weight of the metal is heavy. Like aluminum
Yeah.
is not even in the class of heavy metal because it's not heavy enough. But aluminum is not ideal in high amounts in the body, so there's metals that are not heavy metals that are dangerous. And then there's metals that are heavy metals that are not dangerous. So heavy metals doesn't tell anybody anything about anything. And that's what these people have done is they've come in pretending to be metal experts, heavy metal detox experts, and they're absolutely not. They don't even know the basics. They don't even know that zinc and copper are heavy metals and essential for life. And they say bullshit. Like they'll say it only takes out the bad metals, not the good ones. It exchanges the bad ones for the good ones through ion exchange. Bullshit. Like it might take calcium from you and then give you sodium, but why would you want that? Why would you want that? We can just salt our foods if we want more sodium. We don't want to lose calcium. And my husband, he's working on a documentary. I think you've messaged with him actually.
Yes. Yeah.
He's working on a documentary, and what he has uncovered is just so shocking. Like there's so many scammers, swindlers, and villains in this zeolite space. Like we have found once a zeolite company is exposed for fraud, or in the case of Wayora, which was one of the original zeolite companies, they were fined $12 million. And then the people involved in Wayora, like Eddie Stone, have you heard of Eddie Stone from Touchstone Essentials PBX?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he was part of Wayora that was fined 12 million. And then after they get fined, they just start a new one. They just start they just start a new one. Like it's so villainous to me. They don't learn from anything, and there's no regulations in the United States supplement industry. Since 1994, they haven't been regulating anything. Everybody talks about the FDA. The FDA's in our supplements. No, they're not. They don't give a shit. They don't care. And they haven't been regulating your supplements since 1994. And that's why there's so many scammers in the United States supplement industry. But I come from Canada. And so I worked in the Canadian health industry for 17 years, and we have the most red tape in our industry of any health industry in the entire world, of any country in the entire world. So we have NPN numbers on our products, natural product number. That has to have 10 years of research. It's all approved by Health Canada. We have to submit negative reviews to Health Canada. Like if a customer comes back and says, I want a refund on this vitamin C, it gave me diarrhea, then we have to go, yes, ma'am, of course, and give them the refund and then write down what happened to them and submit that to the company. And they have to submit that to Health Canada. So there's just a lot more regulations in Canada. Like so many products were pulled off the shelves in 2008 in Canada when we got these NPN numbers. And, I saw a lot of fear. I saw a lot of people, oh, we don't want the government in our stuff, and kind of losing it a little bit. And in the end, what I saw was a safer industry, a safer health industry, better products, and people that, if they didn't have the money to do the research, they couldn't put a product out. And I don't really see a problem with that. If you want to put a product out, get some capital, get some cash, do the research, and then put your product out. So, unfortunately, the United States supplement industry is the opposite. They will, and you'll see this in the wellness space that's dominated by these United States companies, that they gaslight customers. Like if a customer comes to them and says, I had a seizure, or I had to rush my child to the ER with a seizure. This is a real case that happened with Touchstone Essentials PBX. Is a mother gave it to her toddler. The toddler immediately got a seizure. She rushed her to the ER. And then she reported that to PBX, Touchstone
Yeah.
Essentials. And then when we contacted Touchstone Essentials, I think a week later or so, they said, no, we haven't received any reports on seizures. So there's a lot of lying, there's a lot of gaslighting. They'll tell customers that's detox. That's a good thing. You're toxic. That's a good thing. Like it's a good thing that you have rashes all over your body. It's a good thing that you can't get out of bed and you're suddenly bedridden. So they gaslight customers, they lie. Online you'll see these kind of reps just blocking customers. If the customer didn't have a good experience, they just block them. Because they're in their mind, they're thinking, well, they're not going to buy from me again, so I don't need you. Bye. So just a
Hmm.
lot of nefarious characters in the United States wellness space. So, and I think the Americans deserve better. In the United States, there's this spirit of freedom. There's always this spirit of freedom, and so they think that they're engaging in freedom by buying supplements and fuck the man, fuck the pharma. But it's like, these guys are pharma too. These guys are the same, where they're selling poisons masked as medicine and they're fooling you. But the difference is with pharma, they give you a long list of side effects to be
Hmm.
aware of. Whereas with the United States supplement industry, they say, no, no, there's no side effects on natural products. It's natural, no side effects. So
Yeah.
it's the same. It's the same enemy. The pharma and the nutraceuticals, the pharmaceuticals, it's all the same stuff. It's all the same people.
100%.
The
People
same
forget that. Oh,
greed.
well, people forget that the wellness market, like the natural supplement market, is much larger than the pharmaceutical industry as well. It's like five or
Yeah,
six
billion.
trillion dollars versus
Yeah,
like 1 or 2 trillion, which is an interesting thing too.
exactly.
And you
It's
know what's so
huge.
funny? I'd never thought I'd have an episode on this podcast where we were making the pharmaceutical companies look better than the natural companies, but
Yeah,
it's
because
100% true, and it's a big problem.
yeah, and they're villains too. They're villains too, but they follow the laws of karma, where you have to tell your victim what you're doing to them. What do they call that in the occult? The method of revelation or
Mm,
revelation of the method. They have this name for this occult
yeah.
practice of telling you what they're doing to you and getting your consent before doing it. And so that's what they do with all those side effect lists, the manufacturer's packet insert. That's what they're doing. They're telling you exactly what's going to happen. There's even death written in some of these side effect lists. They write death as a side effect and they give that to you and then you go, yep, okay, and you
Yep.
take it. So they're working with these laws of karma to evade obstruction on their path. Because if everybody's giving the consent, then are you really doing anything wrong? That's how they're thinking. Of course they are doing something wrong because it's manipulative and they're taking advantage of people that are not reading the fine print. Because people
Mm,
don't read the fine print. But
no.
at least it's there if you want to read it, but you don't find that with supplements. But in the Canadian health industry, on the bottles, they have long lists of contraindications and who can't take it and all that stuff. So whereas in the United States supplement industry, you don't have that. Like they don't really track any of that. So we would love to get that changed, especially for zeolites. We would love for zeolites to come with a packet insert that describes all the different side effects that people experience on those products so that people can actually make an informed decision, instead of
Yeah.
damaging this new generation of babies and children, which just absolutely breaks my heart that so many
Yeah.
children have been demineralized so early in life. It just breaks my heart,
$100%.
it's so unnecessary. And these mothers were trying to do the best for their kids. They were trying to protect them from the toxic world that they had been conditioned to believe in. So yeah, it's just tragic all around because they
Yeah.
had the best intentions. The moms did, the ones that wanted to help their babies, but then
Yeah.
they stripped them down. We had reports of babies going gray on zeolites, babies' teeth turning translucent and falling apart. Like
Wow.
it's yeah,
Wow.
it's horrible what they've done.
So what I've noticed is, because our narrative kind of at Beyond Terrain is the root causes, toxicities, deficiencies, traumas, physical, psychological. And what I've noticed is there are a few zeolite salesmen that follow the page, and I've noticed their narrative shift as well as, oh, we are addressing the root cause. It's not just a parasite cleanse, we're addressing the root cause, and they kind of shift that narrative in favor of their sales pitch, of course, which is a good
Yeah.
business move.
Yeah.
So what I'm kind of assuming will happen now, and it already does happen, is oh well, the PBX, the what is it, clinopolite, the natural zeolite. These aren't synthesized in a lab. These are much better for you. These are just natural volcanic rocks, and they painted in this picture as natural and thus good,
Yeah.
and healthy. Which is absolutely not necessarily the case.
No.
Is there a difference in zeolite from the stories that you've heard and that you guys are documenting? Does it still occur with these so-called natural zeolites?
Absolutely, because even the natural zeolites remove essential minerals. So, a lot of the side effects that people experience from any zeolite product are side effects from mineral deficiencies, like from minerals being removed from your body. So, whether it's natural or synthetic, they're all going to remove minerals from your body. And my husband recently read a study showing that clinoptilolite, the natural form, that it does break down into aluminum in the body, because they all say, oh, no, it's inert. The aluminum doesn't break down.
Yeah.
Well, the newest study shows that it does break down. And so you're releasing aluminum into your system, and that's natural and synthetic. I saw a sales rep for this clinoptilolite natural PBX zeolite. I saw a sales rep saying to her audience, no, it doesn't have any aluminum because it's the natural one, but they all have aluminum, because
Yeah.
that's the composition of that rock. It's an aluminosilicate, so it has aluminum with silica. It's aluminum bound to silica, and it has some
Wow.
zinc, or it has some other metals, but it's aluminum based. It's an aluminum based rock. And this is just what I really want the public to know, is that humans are not designed to consume rocks. We're just not.
Really?
Yeah, we're not. Yeah, we're not. That's not our food. Like, plants
No.
eat the rocks, animals eat the plants, and then we eat the plants or the animals. That's just the
Yeah.
cycle. That's the circle of life. You know.
Yeah. Oh, wow. One thing that because I was that was one thing that I was worried about, and when I went to read the literature, I found papers on cows, and they tested their minerals, and they said everything was fine. So are we just
Yes.
falling into the same trap of like redo the study until you get the result that you want? And obviously these are
No.
done on
Okay.
cows.
Let me tell you about that cow study. When they give zeolites to cows, this is not as a dietary supplement. This is not as a detox. When they give zeolites to cows, it's as an anti-caking agent at less than 1% in the feed. So
Mm,
what they actually showed was that as long as it's less than 1% in the feed, that it's not high enough in the feed to affect the cows. So this is not like they were giving them zeolite sprays for detoxing metals. They were simply using an aluminosilicate to absorb moisture, because zeolites are very, very dehydrating. That's another
yeah.
reason they harm people so much, because they dehydrate your system. So they're using this. Material, this rock, as an anti-caking agent to absorb moisture in the feed, but they found they have to keep it at less than 1%. Otherwise, the chickens stop laying eggs, and they do start developing issues.
Wow.
So it's just in a trace amount. So then that sales reps, they take that study. I saw sales reps like Talia Cruz and her little crew. I saw them take that study and say, see, it's safe for breastfeeding mothers because this cow study showed that it doesn't deplete minerals. So that means it's safe for you to give your babies, and it's safe for you to take while you're pregnant and breastfeeding. But that does not equate, because this is an anti-caking agent at less than 1% in the feed. It's in such a trace amount just to absorb moisture. It's not being given in multiple sprays per day. It's not being given as a supplement. And then they're giving babies, pregnant women, mothers, high amounts of zeolites. So it's completely different. And they found that for humans, they can't go above 2% when they use the synthetic zeolite as an anti-caking agent in creamers and spices and stuff. They can't go above 2%, otherwise health issues start to develop. So
Hmm.
those studies are being totally misunderstood and misconstrued.
Yeah. Wow.
Like the chickens stopped laying eggs if they went above
Significant.
1%.
Yeah. You know,
Infertility.
yeah, well, one of the highest, yeah, one of the worst symptoms of them all. Um,
Yeah.
you know, it's interesting to me the degree of hypocrisy that's occurring too, because if you apply that logic of, oh, we tested it on cows and chickens, it's safe for babies and pregnant ladies, you would
Yeah.
absolutely never ever appreciate that external validity. You would say that's nonsense, that's not a
Yeah.
proper clinical trial. I mean, there's not a
That's right.
modern academic scientist that would accept that, or an alternative one, and for some
That's right.
reason, it's still being perpetuated on the people as, oh, look at this. And that's the strong rhetoric and the positive
Mhm.
stories and stuff. And of course,
Mhm.
it's pulling on the heartstrings of mothers, and
Yes.
children are suffering, but we're not just going to exchange suffering for more suffering, right? And
Exactly. Yeah.
um, we cannot be have any hypocrisy when it comes to assessing this data and the literature,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Exactly. And that's the thing, is that in the zeolite space, you find the most hypocrisy of all. That they do exactly what they accuse the pharmaceutical reps and the pharmaceutical companies of doing. So, and, I really want people to know that you really don't want to ever detox metals, because if you're going to detox the bad metals, that means the good metals are going to be taken as well. So you can't just detox only bad metals. It's not possible. And
Mhm.
there's an expert in heavy metals, Dr. Boyd Haley, and he says that if you wanted to test for heavy metals, you'd have to cut open the whole body and test every organ, because metals are all deposited differently. Mercury goes in the fat cells, lead in the bone. So when people say, "Oh, well, I did this oligo, or I did this test through my hand, or I did a hair trace mineral analysis, or so that means I'm toxic in metals," no, it doesn't, because all of the metals have different functions in the body. Kind of how you were talking before about the personality and expression of minerals and metals.
Yeah.
They act differently. They all have a different purpose. They're all deposited differently. So you can't just take the hair and use that as a gauge for what's in the body. The hair doesn't reflect what's in the bone, what's in the organs, what's in the fat cells. And this is not the solution, because again, if you remove the bad metals, you're also going to be removing the good. There's no way of getting the bad out without taking the good. So what I want people to know is that the real solution is to correct your nutrient deficiencies. As an example, if you are high in mercury, or you feel that you have symptoms indicating that you're high in mercury, selenium is the mineral that regulates mercury. So you would increase selenium either through a whole food supplement, or beef or pork or seafood. And you could use your symptoms to determine, if you really think, oh, maybe I have high mercury, just look at the symptoms and see, and then do it safely with food sources of selenium. And that's going to regulate. Selenium does a lot. It regulates mercury, cadmium, arsenic, lead. Calcium regulates lead. So if people are worried about lead, they just need more calcium. But, I kind of have this saying: regulate rather than bind or chelate. So
Yeah.
regulate the minerals with other essential minerals, because all of those essential minerals play together like a family. They all interact with each other. It's like this whole little universe. These minerals are all playing together. They antagonize each other. Zinc and copper balance each other. So if you have too much copper, you take zinc, or vice versa. So I know it's a little more complex, and it takes a little more learning than just spray this in your mouth. But it's the real solution. It's the real solution, rather than fucking yourself over and your family.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And
Hmm.
getting back to nature, eating the whole foods, that's where
Yes.
that's where longevity's at. That's what our
Yes.
bodies are used to. You know, I learned in when I studied biochemistry in university, we learned obviously a lot about enzymes and cofactors. And I
Mhm.
remember actually reading a few studies on arsenic being a necessary cofactor for certain proteins, obviously in low amounts. But
Thank
you know,
you.
we've
Thank
we've
you.
sort of we've demonized heavy metals, and it's sort of acting as
Yeah.
a scapegoat now. And do I agree with, the amount of heavy metals that are polluting our environment? Absolutely not, through mining practices or
Hmm.
exhausts. But it's not as though
Hmm.
there aren't natural heavy metals that we encounter. Like in spring water, people freak out when there's a few heavy metals or a little bit of fluoride in it. And it's like this is a natural thing that our bodies are designed to be able to deal with, regulate,
Yeah.
manage when we are in attune with nature, consuming a natural diet.
Yeah.
But of course, in this modern world, there are, different levels of metals now. There is an imbalance. And, if you're consuming modern agriculture, our soil is certainly depleted in certain
Hmm.
minerals, or at least depleted in, microbes and worms for plants to be able to utilize those minerals. But
Hmm.
slightly different discussion. I just think that's an important point. It sounds like that hit sort of a chord for you there too.
Yeah, well, I wanted to say thank you because, I had been telling people about the veterinarian Dr. Joel Wallach, who found many biological purposes for arsenic. And one of the longest living cultures in Italy, they were drinking a really high arsenic spring water, and they were all
Wow.
great. They were all
Yeah.
healthy and wonderful. And I do think it's like, that there is a lot of fear mongering around metals that's not really based in reality. That metals are not really what's causing people's health issues. I would say that not having the basics down is causing the majority of health issues. Eating late at night, not getting the sunrise, not sleeping at night, not eating the right foods, not eating enough, not eating 3 times a day, skipping meals. Like, just get the foundations in place and see if you feel better before you start stripping all your metals away. But yeah, it did strike a chord because I was teaching people about that, new studies are now showing that there's biological purposes for arsenic, but it's like there's not a lot of human studies because we're not really researching on
Yeah.
humans, we're researching on animals, but it's showing that animals have these biological purposes for arsenic. And then Matt Blackburn did a podcast where they said they were definitely talking about me because they were talking about how spring water is bad, zeolites are good, and that can you believe some people are even saying arsenic is an essential mineral? So they were kind of like,
Yeah.
mocking me or whatever they were doing. I don't know. I didn't listen, but I just someone had showed me the title of the podcast episode, and it was like, and can you believe people are even calling arsenic an essential mineral? It's like, yeah, we really have so far to go to really understand Earth. We are earthlings, we come from Earth, and inside the Earth are metals. You are never, ever going to escape metals. Every food on the planet contains metals, every single one. People will say to me, oh no, I found out that there's arsenic in this food. And then I'll have to show them every food has arsenic, every one, every
Hmm.
fruit, vegetable, meat, all of them. It's because it's coming from Earth. Earth has arsenic, cadmium, radon, all of these metals and isotopes. All of this stuff is coming from the Earth and the ocean. The ocean is full of metals. It's full of metals. It comes from the underwater volcanoes. They erupt and then they disperse metals. And then the fish, the seafood, they convert those metals into organic forms. And
Hmm.
organic forms of arsenic, I would argue that organic forms of arsenic are necessary for health.
Yeah. Yeah.
The organic forms of arsenic that you get from seafood is necessary for health, along with the other metals. And they all regulate each other and they all balance each other. So that, we have a long way to go to get out of this whole toxic world fear. Heavy metals are causing everyone's health issues. There was such a big incentive for these zeolite reps. There was huge commissions. There is huge commissions on these products. So these people were incentivized to fearmonger. They were incentivized to drill people. It's toxic. Everything's toxic. Toxic world. Heavy metals. Heavy metals. Heavy metals. They were incentivized to do that. So we were not getting educated from experts in heavy metals or experts of nature. We were getting educated by people who had an agenda to make money on a detox product.
Yeah. Yeah. Well put.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and a good point is that, those zeolites are cost literally nothing to make.
Mm-hmm.
They're very
Two
expensive and they
bucks.
cost nothing to make. That's why they can
$2.
really incentivize the sales reps
Yes.
there.
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
a,
Yep.
a, a
Yep.
point I wanted to make really quick, just to
Yes.
avoid any logical contradictions, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, but the idea that we're now saying, you don't necessarily need to fear metals like we've all been told to.
Mm-hmm.
But what about zeolite? Isn't zeolite a metal? Should we just not fear zeolite since it's made out of aluminum? What are we even worried about? Well, like, first
Well,
of all, I think what I'm gathering from the argument is that, it's we're worried about mineral depletion with zeolite. That's the major
yes,
concern.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
it's not necessarily the toxicity from the aluminum, although there seems to be
Yeah, it is.
some breakdown with that.
Yes.
Again, from our perspective, we generally take the stance that, with getting back to sort of more ancestral principles is a healthy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Consumption of volcanic stones that are ground up into nano
Yeah.
sizes, and these things are processed in laboratories and it is consumed
Yes.
in an unnatural fashion. So there is a lot of unnatural nature to the consumption of these, natural quote unquote minerals,
Mm-hmm.
volcanic rocks. And that kind of aligns with our argument, that of the amount of lead and cadmium and aluminum and beryllium that is rained down from exhaust from planes or comes out of car exhaust. It's not great to inhale. Again,
Mm-hmm.
an unnatural form rather than
Mm-hmm.
consuming a spring water with trace amounts of lead or fluoride or whatever it may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a little bit of a point there. I don't know if you have any comments on
Well,
that. That's just sort of my
yeah.
thoughts on what I've gathered.
Well, I would say that you should be cautious about certain metals. I'm not saying that all metals are good. I'm saying that metals exist in the earth. You're not going to escape metals. But the metals in foods, these organic forms of metals in food are
Hmm.
necessary for health, but rocks are not food. I'm really interested in gemstones. I collect raw minerals. I study raw minerals. And there's some raw minerals that you can't even touch. They're so poisonous. They're
Yeah.
so high in aluminum. They're so high in certain toxic metals that you can't even touch them. They're meant to just sit on a shelf and look pretty. And zeolite is one of them. And my
Mm.
husband actually interviewed a geologist that is an expert in zeolites. And he was shocked that people are consuming zeolites. He had
Wow.
no idea. He had no idea because he's in a different part of zeolite study. He's studying, like, they study it for wastewater treatment, not for consumption,
Yeah.
wastewater treatment. Or, he's studying the geological properties as a gemstone, as a rock, as an inorganic raw mineral. He's not studying it for, hey, can we give this to babies to detox? So he was shocked. He was blown away. He couldn't believe that people would eat the rocks. And any gemstone dealer or jeweler or geologist that you talk to is going to be absolutely horrified that people are giving zeolite rocks to babies. So, that's just the one thing. When you study gemstones and raw minerals, you find out that you don't really want to be handling a lot of them. And zeolite would be in that category because it's so high in aluminum. So you don't want to be handling them. Aluminum in an organic form in a food is going to act very differently. And it's got a lot of different metals to help you regulate it. You've got magnesium to bring down aluminum. You've got selenium to bring down aluminum. But, you can't be poisoning yourself with rocks, with
Yeah.
these toxic, concentrated metals.
Yeah. Well put. So where does this leave us now, Kayleigh? Where do we leave the listener? If we're not telling
Don't
them to
eat
consume
rocks.
rocks, what should they do?
Don't eat rocks, eat food. Just eat food. That's really what people need to be focusing on, is getting the foundations in place, the foundations that your grandparents uh, held true, and your great grandparents. I remember my grandmother always saying, well, don't you need nourishment? Because I'd be skipping breakfast or skipping lunch, and she'd go, well, you're not going to have any nourishment. And, they're sunrise people. They're all about waking up for the morning, seeing the sun, And we lost a lot of those human traditions that kept us well. So I would just say to people to get back to human tradition, and that will get us back to human health. So get back to rising with the sun, seeing the sunrise, having your breakfast within an hour of waking, making sure that your breakfast and your lunch and your supper are easy to digest, like soups and stews, and go to bed early. It's really, really simple. Sunrise, eat 3 meals a day, make sure that they're digesting well, and get to bed. And that's it.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Beautiful message to finish
Thank
off.
you.
Kayleigh, how can people learn more from you? Where can they find you on the internet? How can they support you? And so curious about this film that is soon to come out.
Yes, so they can follow my husband on the Light of Hermes. He's a Virgo, and Virgo is personified by Hermes, like Mercury.
Yeah.
So it's called the Light of Hermes. You can find him on TikTok and Instagram, and he's going to come out with that Zeolite documentary soon. There were so many interviews he had to do. He interviewed so many people that were injured by zeolites. He interviewed owners of zeolite companies, sales reps of zeolites, tons of people. But for me, you can find me on nutrition.elements on Instagram or TikTok. And you can find me on Patreon/nutrition elements, patreon.com/nutrition elements. And if you're interested in hearing my music, I'm on all the music platforms and Spotify, and I record in 432 hertz, and I tune my instruments in 432 hertz, which in some studies has shown to be more soothing than 440 hertz.
Really cool. You know what? I haven't checked out your music, and I'm gonna do that right as soon as we're done recording. Can't wait to do that.
Oh,
That's
thanks so
that's
much.
amazing.
Thank you so
Amazing.
much for having me.
Wonderful. No, this has been an amazing discussion, and I feel like we are only scratching the surface, so we might have to do another one in the future because you're a beautiful mind and
Sure.
you have a great message.
Aw,
So I do
thank
really, really
you.
appreciate your time today.
I appreciate you too. Thank you so much.
Okay. All right, and I want to thank you all so much for listening. Before we wrap it up, we all need to remember that this is for informational purposes only, and this does not constitute medical or therapeutic advice and will not replace the advice from a qualified practitioner. But also remember this, that we are sovereign beings capable of thinking, criticizing, and understanding absolutely anything. We are self-healers, self-teachers, self-governable, and so much more. And together with each other and the greater forces, we can regain our natural vitality, meaning, clarity, purpose, and health. I do really appreciate you all for taking the time to listen to the podcast today. If you want to support what we do, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, leave a rating or a review, and follow the show. Sharing is the extra step. Let a few people know about the podcast. And if you do want to go deeper and you do want to deeply support what we do here at Beyond Train, join the Beyond Train Academy. There is a ton of value in there available for you all. There is free resources as well, so do not miss out on those. If you have any questions, criticisms, comments, concerns, please reach out to me. Instagram is a great way to do that. Email works as well. But just remember, there are two types of people in the world: those who believe they can, those who believe they can't, and they are both correct. Thank you all for listening. Take care.